The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with a low hum of conversation as representatives from dozens of species gathered for the emergency session. Admiral Zephix of the Altarian Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor, the crystalline plates catching the artificial light as he reviewed the intelligence reports on his datapad. The news was troubling, though not unexpected. The humans have finally decided to join the Galactic Defense Initiative, announced Chancellor Vrex, her multiple eyes scanning the assembly. The reptilian leader's voice carried a mix of amusement and disdain. After 3 years of isolation following first contact, they claimed to be ready to contribute to galactic security. A ripple of laughter echoed through the chamber. Commander Thok of the Bertarian clans slammed his massive fist on his desk, causing several smaller delegates to jump. Humans? Those soft, pink creatures? They have no natural weapons, no thick hide, no enhanced reflexes. What could they possibly offer our military forces? Admiral Zephix stood, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture of authority. The Altarians have been the dominant military power in the galaxy for over 2 centuries, their superior technology and enhanced physiology making them natural warriors. I have studied their preliminary military assessments, he began, his voice carrying across the chamber. Their physical capabilities are adequate at best. Average height, limited strength, poor natural armor. They lack the bone density of the Crothari, the speed of the Veloxians, or the regenerative abilities of the Helix Confederation. Their technology is equally unimpressive, added Dr. Centaura, the chief military analyst from the Silicon Collective. Her metallic form shimmered as data streams flowed across her surface. Chemical propellant weapons, basic armor plating, primitive communication systems. Their most advanced spacecraft barely achieve faster-than-light travel. By our standards, they are at least 3 technological generations behind the current galactic standard. General Corvus of the Titan Sovereignty leaned forward, his massive frame dwarfing the reinforced chair beneath him. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, with natural armor plating and enhanced musculature, he represented everything the galaxy considered ideal in a warrior. I reviewed their combat simulations during the evaluation process. Their reaction times are slow, their tactical thinking is rigid, and their equipment failures under stress conditions exceed acceptable parameters by significant margins. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. The evaluation process had been thorough, designed to assess each species' potential contribution to the Galactic Defense Initiative. Every member species had to prove their worth before being granted full military status within the Alliance. The tests covered physical capability, technological advancement, tactical innovation, and battlefield psychology. Perhaps we should consider their request more carefully, suggested Ambassador Lyrics of the Peaceful Harmony Coalition, her melodious voice cutting through the skeptical murmurs. Every species brings unique perspectives to military strategy. The humans might offer something we have not considered. Admiral Zephix's laugh was sharp and dismissive. What could they possibly offer that we lack? The Altarians possess superior firepower and tactical precision. The Bertarians provide unmatched ground assault capabilities. The Crothari excel in defensive operations with their natural armor. The Veloxians handle reconnaissance and rapid strike missions. The Silicon Collective manages our technological warfare systems. What role remains for a species that excels in nothing? Chancellor Vrex activated the central holographic display, showing detailed anatomical scans of human soldiers during their evaluation exercises. The images rotated slowly, highlighting various physiological measurements. Observe their limitations. Bone density 30% below galactic military standards. Muscle fiber efficiency rating of only 62% compared to optimized warrior species. Their cardiovascular system shows adequate but not exceptional performance under stress conditions. Their psychological profiles are equally concerning, added Dr. Mentaris, the chief psychologist from the Mind Collective. Humans display unpredictable emotional responses during combat scenarios. They show evidence of fear, anger, and what they term protective instincts that can override logical tactical decisions. Such emotional volatility makes them unreliable in critical situations. Commander Thok snorted, his tusks gleaming. Emotion in battle is weakness. The Brittarian way teaches that rage must be controlled and channeled. These humans seem to let their feelings control them instead of controlling their feelings. How can such creatures be trusted with important military operations? The discussion continued for hours as various representatives shared their observations from the human evaluation period. The consensus was clear. Humanity was simply not suited for serious military operations within the Galactic Defense Initiative. Their technology was outdated, their physical capabilities were limited, and their psychological profiles suggested they would be more liability than asset in real combat situations. General Corvus accessed his personal files, displaying combat footage from recent conflicts. Consider our recent victory against the Void Reapers in the Andromeda sector. The battle required precise coordination between 17 different species, each contributing their specialized capabilities. The Altarians provided heavy bombardment. We Titans handled frontline assault. The Crothri established defensive positions, and the Veloxians conducted flanking maneuvers. Every species had a clear, defined role based on their natural advantages. Exactly, agreed Admiral Zefix. Military efficiency requires specialists, not generalists. The humans appear to be adequate at many things, but exceptional at nothing. In warfare, exceptional capabilities matter more than general competence. Dr. Centaura projected tactical analysis data into the chamber. Their proposed military doctrine emphasizes what they call combined arms tactics and adaptive strategies. These approaches suggest they plan to compensate for individual limitations through complex coordination and improvisation. However, our combat algorithms indicate such approaches are inherently less efficient than species-optimized strategic frameworks. The debate stretched into the evening cycle as delegates examined every aspect of human military potential. Their weapons were considered primitive compared to energy-based systems used by advanced civilizations. Their armor provided minimal protection compared to natural defensive capabilities possessed by warrior species. Their vehicles and spacecraft showed functional design, but lacked the sophisticated features expected in modern warfare. There is one additional factor to consider, mentioned Secretary Valdres from the Economic Stability Council. The humans occupy a strategically important sector of the galaxy. Their solar system sits at the intersection of three major hyperspace routes. Granting them junior military status within the initiative would secure those routes under our protection treaty. Chancellor Vrex nodded slowly. A valid point. The location provides value even if their military contribution does not. Perhaps we can offer them a support role rather than active combat duty. Supply line management, suggested General Corvus. Every major military operation requires logistics coordination. The humans could handle cargo transport, equipment maintenance, and base security operations. Such roles would keep them useful while minimizing their exposure to actual combat situations. Admiral Zefix stood and faced the assembly. I propose we grant the humans provisional membership in the Galactic Defense Initiative with the understanding that their role will be limited to support functions. They can contribute to overall galactic security without being placed in situations where their limitations could compromise important military operations. The motion carried by an overwhelming majority. Only Ambassador Lyrics and a handful of representatives from smaller species voted against the proposal, citing concerns about underestimating potential allies. The decision was recorded in the official galactic database and transmitted to Earth within hours. On Earth, General Sarah Chun read the response message in her Pentagon office, surrounded by maps, tactical displays, and communication equipment linking her to military commanders around the globe. The message was diplomatic but clear. Humanity was being offered junior membership with severely restricted responsibilities. Support roles only, she read aloud to her staff. Logistics, maintenance, base security. No frontline combat assignments, no strategic planning participation, no access to advanced tactical intelligence. She set down the datapad and looked out the window at the bustling military complex below. They think we're not good enough for real fighting. Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, her chief of staff, reviewed the detailed terms of the agreement. It's better than complete rejection, General. We get access to galactic military technology, training with alien forces, and protection under the Mutual Defense Treaty. Our scientists will learn about advanced weapons, armor, and spacecraft systems. General Chen nodded, but her expression remained troubled. I understand the practical benefits, Marcus, but I also understand what this really means. They're patting us on the head and giving us busy work while the real warriors handle important business. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, suggested Dr. Elizabeth Warner, the Pentagon's chief xenologist. We get time to observe their capabilities, learn their tactics, and understand how galactic warfare actually works. This could be valuable preparation for future opportunities. The general walked to her tactical display and activated the Global Military Status Board. Icons representing bases, fleets, and units around the world glowed in various colors, indicating readiness levels. You're both right about the practical aspects, but there's something else to consider. Every military leader in this room knows that underestimating your enemy is dangerous. What concerns me is that these aliens might be making the same mistake about us. Over the following weeks, Earth's military leadership prepared for integration into the Galactic Defense Initiative. Training programs were established to familiarize human personnel with alien technology and procedures. Selection criteria were developed to choose the best candidates for off-world assignments. Equipment was modified to interface with galactic standard systems. The preparation process revealed interesting challenges. Human equipment needed significant modification to meet galactic safety standards. Weapons systems required complete redesign to avoid accidentally harming alien personnel with different physiologies. Communication protocols had to be adapted for species with various sensory capabilities and cognitive frameworks. It's humbling, admitted Colonel Jennifer Walsh, the head of the integration team. Their technology is so far beyond ours that we're basically starting from scratch. Our best combat vehicles are considered training equipment by their standards. Yet the human military personnel approached these challenges with characteristic determination. They studied alien tactical manuals, practiced with unfamiliar equipment, and learned to work alongside species with radically different capabilities and perspectives. The learning curve was steep, but progress was steady. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the various military commands of the Initiative continued their regular operations with minimal thought given to their new human allies. The Altarian fleet conducted patrol missions along contested borders. Britarian ground forces maintained readiness for potential conflicts. The war machine of galactic civilization continued its steady rotation. Admiral Zephyx received regular reports on human integration progress, but paid them little attention. The reports indicated satisfactory adaptation to support roles and adequate performance in training exercises. Nothing suggested the humans would require special attention or present unexpected complications. Their cargo transport efficiency has improved by 12% over initial projections, noted as aide during a routine briefing. Equipment maintenance completion rates are within acceptable parameters. Base security protocols have been implemented without significant issues. Satisfactory, replied the Admiral, already focused on more pressing concerns. Intelligence reports suggested increased Void Reaper activity in the outer sectors. The enemy was probing defenses, testing response times, gathering information for potential major offensive operations. These developments demanded attention from experienced military leaders, not newly integrated support species. The first human units arrived at Galactic Defense Initiative bases within 6 months of the agreement. They were assigned to logistics hubs, maintenance facilities, and secure installations well behind potential front lines. The alien personnel they worked alongside were polite, but distant viewing the humans as helpful but unremarkable additions to the support structure. Captain David Park commanded the first human contingent assigned to forward Base Epsilon in the Centauri sector. His unit of 200 soldiers was responsible for equipment maintenance and supply distribution for a facility housing over 10,000 alien military personnel from dozens of different species. It's impressive, he reported to Earth during his first weekly briefing. The scale of operations here is beyond anything we've seen. They move entire battle fleets like we move individual ships. Their logistics chain supply operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. But Captain Park also noticed things that concerned him. Despite their advanced technology and superior capabilities, the alien forces operated with rigid procedural structures that left little room for adaptation when circumstances changed. Their tactical planning was thorough, but inflexible. Their equipment was powerful, but required specific conditions to function optimally. They're used to overwhelming superiority, he noted in his personal log. Every engagement they've described involves deploying forces so superior that victory is essentially guaranteed before fighting begins. I haven't heard any discussions about what happens when they face an enemy that doesn't cooperate with their tactical assumptions. These observations would prove more significant than anyone realized as events began to unfold in distant sectors of the galaxy. The Void Reapers, humanity's future enemy, were already adapting their strategies based on careful study of galactic military procedures. They had identified weaknesses in the initiative's rigid tactical frameworks and were preparing to exploit them. But for now, the humans continued their support duties, learning and preparing while the galaxy's military elite remained confident in their superiority. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would challenge every assumption about warfare, capability, and the true nature of what makes a species dangerous in battle. The mocking would continue for months to come, but it would not last forever. The Void Reaper attack came without warning during the third shift at Forward Base Epsilon. Captain David Park was reviewing supply manifests in the logistics center when the base alarm system erupted in a cacophony of sound that meant only one thing: imminent attack. All personnel to battle stations echoed through the corridors in 17 different languages. The translation systems worked overtime as species-specific warnings filled the air. Captain Park immediately activated his communication link to Earth while rushing toward the command center. Base Epsilon to Terra Command. We are under attack. Repeat, Forward Base Epsilon is under direct assault by unknown forces. The command center was chaos when he arrived. Alien officers from dozens of species worked frantically at their stations while holographic displays showed the tactical situation developing around the base. What Park saw made his blood run cold. Enemy fleet strength? He asked Commander Vorthak, the Crothry officer overseeing defensive operations. Initial scans indicate 12 Void Reaper dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and approximately 200 smaller vessels, Vorthak replied, his armored hide glistening with stress secretions. Our defensive fleet consists of 6 vessels currently in system. Park stared at the tactical display. The numbers were impossible. The Void Reapers had somehow assembled a massive fleet without detection and positioned it perfectly to overwhelm the base's defenses. What about reinforcements? Nearest fleet units are 18 hours away at maximum burn, reported Lieutenant Sixtara from the communications station. Admiral Zefix's main force is engaged in exercises in the Vega sector. The Titan sovereignty fleets are conducting operations near the Galactic Rim. The first explosions rocked the base as Void Reaper forces began their bombardment. The defensive shields held initially, but power readings showed they were draining rapidly under the concentrated assault. Park could see the fear in the eyes of the alien personnel around him. They had never faced a situation where they were seriously outnumbered. "Sir," called one of Park's human soldiers over the communication system. "Sergeant Miller here. My maintenance teams are reporting that half the base's automated defense systems are malfunctioning. The Void Reapers are using some kind of electronic warfare that's disrupting our computer networks." Park's mind raced as he processed the information. The alien forces around him were following standard defensive protocols, but those protocols assumed technological superiority and adequate fleet support. Neither assumption applied to their current situation. "Commander Vorthak," he said, approaching the Crothery officer. "What are your contingency plans for evacuation?" Vorthak's multiple eyes focused on him with confusion. "Evacuation? This is a fortified position. We hold defensive positions until fleet reinforcements arrive. But the fleet won't arrive for 18 hours, and our shields won't last 18 minutes at this rate. Then we fight with honor and hold as long as possible," Vorthak replied firmly. "That is the Galactic way." Park looked around the command center and realized that none of the alien officers were seriously considering alternatives to standing and fighting. Their entire military doctrine was based on having superior forces and technology. When faced with a situation where they didn't have those advantages, they simply planned to fight harder with the same tactics. Another massive explosion shook the base. The lights flickered and several systems went offline. Through the viewports, Park could see Void Reaper assault shuttles beginning their descent toward the base perimeter. "Sir," came another voice over his communicator. "Staff Sergeant Johnson reporting. The aliens are setting up defensive positions according to their manual procedures, but they're not adapting to actual enemy movements. The Void Reapers are flanking their positions while they're still setting up predetermined firing patterns." Park made a decision that would change everything. "All human personnel, this is Captain Park. Switch to Tactical Frequency 7 and prepare for independent operations. We're going to help our allies, but we're going to do it our way." He turned to Commander Vorthak. "Sir, I request permission to deploy my personnel to assist with base defense." Vorthak's expression showed surprise. "Your soldiers are support personnel. They lack proper combat training and equipment for battlefield operations. With respect, sir, they're soldiers first and support personnel second. And right now, you need every soldier you can get." The base shook again as another section of the shield grid failed. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the command center as damage reports flooded in. Vorthak nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but they must follow standard defensive protocols." Park smiled grimly. "Absolutely, sir. Standard defensive protocols." He switched to the human tactical frequency as he left the command center. "All units, this is actual. We have authorization to assist with base defense. Implement Operation Flexible Response." Operation Flexible Response was not in any galactic military manual. It was pure human doctrine developed during centuries of warfare on Earth. The concept was simple: adapt to the situation, use whatever resources are available, and never fight the enemy's battle according to the enemy's terms. Sergeant Miller and his maintenance teams had already begun implementing the first phase. Instead of defending fixed positions, they were turning the base's infrastructure into an active weapon system. Maintenance tunnels became ambush routes. Supply storage areas became improvised strong points. Equipment that was scheduled for repair was modified into booby traps and obstacles. "Captain, this is Sergeant Johnson. My security teams have identified 17 points where the aliens are following predictable patrol routes that the Void Reapers can easily observe and avoid. Request permission to establish alternative defensive positions." "Granted. Make it look like you're following their procedures while actually doing something useful." The human soldiers spread throughout the base, officially supporting alien defensive positions while actually implementing their own tactical framework. They studied the enemy's approach patterns, identified weaknesses in the Void Reaper assault formation, and prepared surprises that no galactic military manual would have considered. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Torres found herself working alongside a unit of Valaxian rapid response troops who were setting up predetermined ambush positions according to their tactical doctrine. The positions were well designed for facing a conventional assault, but the Void Reapers were not conducting a conventional assault. "Sir," she said to the Valaxian commander, "I've been observing enemy movement patterns. They're using adaptive infiltration tactics that will bypass your prepared positions. The Veloxian officer, Captain Zero, looked at her with polite confusion. Our positions are optimal according to standard defensive mathematics. We have overlapping fields of fire and mutually supporting strong points. Yes, sir, but the enemy is avoiding your fields of fire by moving through areas you haven't covered because they're not in the manual. Torres pulled up her own tactical display, showing the base layout with enemy movement overlaid in real time. Look, they're using the ventilation system, the emergency access tunnels, and the spaces between buildings that aren't classified as approaches in the standard doctrine. Captain Zero studied the display, his large eyes tracking the enemy movements. These areas were not included in defensive planning because they do not provide adequate cover for sustained assault operations. They don't need sustained assault operations, sir. They just need to get small teams into position to attack your flanks while you're focused on the main approach routes. The conversation was interrupted by explosions from the direction of the base's main entrance. The Void Reapers had begun their ground assault, and the first phase was proceeding exactly as Torres had predicted. Enemy forces were bypassing the primary defensive positions and attacking from unexpected angles. My teams can help, she offered. We know how to fight in these kind of situations. Captain Zero hesitated, clearly torn between following established procedures and adapting to battlefield reality. Another explosion, closer this time, helped him make the decision. What do you propose? Let us set up secondary positions in the areas they're actually using. We'll create overlapping kill zones that complement your primary defenses. While Torres worked with the Veloxians, other human teams were implementing similar adaptations throughout the base. Sergeant Miller's maintenance crews were turning routine equipment into improvised weapons. Supply containers became blast shields. Repair tools became combat engineering devices. The base's infrastructure was being converted into a three-dimensional battlefield that the Void Reapers had not anticipated. The first breakthrough came when Corporal James Wright, a communications specialist, realized that the Void Reapers' electronic warfare was following predictable patterns. Their jamming systems were cycling through frequencies in a standard sequence designed to disrupt galactic military communications protocols. Captain Park, he reported over the tactical frequency, the enemy's electronic warfare is sophisticated but rigid. They're targeting specific communication frequencies used by initiative forces, but they're not adapting to non-standard frequencies. Can you establish alternative communication networks? Already working on it, sir. I'm setting up a mesh network using equipment frequencies they're not jamming. It won't be as sophisticated as the alien systems, but it'll work for coordination between our units. Within 30 minutes, Wright had established a communication network that connected all human personnel and provided real-time tactical information. The system was primitive by galactic standards, but it was adaptive and functional under current conditions. The real test came when the Void Reapers reached the base perimeter. The alien defenders fought bravely, but their tactics were predictable. They held predetermined positions, used standard fire patterns, and responded to enemy actions according to established procedures. The Void Reapers, having studied galactic military doctrine for years, knew exactly how to counter these approaches. But they didn't know how to counter what the humans were doing. Sergeant Johnson's security teams had established fighting positions in areas that no tactical manual considered significant. When Void Reaper assault troops bypassed the main defensive lines, they found themselves facing concentrated fire from directions they hadn't expected. The humans weren't trying to hold specific locations. They were trying to disrupt enemy operations and create opportunities for counterattack. Enemy assault team approaching Section 7. Torres reported over Wright's improvised network. They're avoiding the Crothery positions and moving through the maintenance complex. Copy that, replied Johnson. Teams 3 and 5 are in position. We'll let them pass the first checkpoint, then hit them from behind while they're focused on the second checkpoint. The engagement lasted only minutes, but its effects were profound. The Void Reaper assault team found themselves trapped between human positions that they hadn't detected and alien defenses that they had expected to bypass. Instead of achieving a clean breakthrough, they were eliminated in a coordinated crossfire that used tactics not found in any galactic military database. Similar scenes played out across the base as human soldiers implemented flexible, adaptive tactics that complemented the rigid but effective alien defensive systems. The Void Reapers had prepared to fight against galactic standard procedures, but they found themselves facing an enemy that combined galactic capabilities with unpredictable human approaches. The tide of battle began to shift when Captain Park realized that the enemy's electronic warfare could be turned against them. Working with Corporal Wright, he developed a plan to use the Void Reapers' own jamming systems to disrupt their coordination. Their jamming is concentrated on our frequencies, Wright explained over the tactical network. But if we generate enough false signals on the frequencies they're protecting, we can overload their filtering systems. Do it, Park ordered. Make them choose between jamming us and maintaining their own communications. Wright's improvised network became a transmission system designed to flood Void Reaper communication frequencies with chaotic signals. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Enemy coordination began to break down as their communication systems struggled to filter useful information from the artificial interference. Commander Vorthak noticed the change from the command center. Enemy assault patterns are becoming disorganized, he reported with surprise. Their coordination appears to be degrading. Human electromagnetic warfare techniques, Park explained when Vorthak asked for clarification. We're using their own jamming systems against them. The Crothery commander's expression showed amazement. This approach is not in any tactical database. How did you develop such techniques? Trial and error, sir. We've learned to work with whatever resources are available. As the battle continued, it became clear that the combination of alien firepower and human adaptability was proving effective against the Void Reaper assault. The enemy had expected to face predictable tactics supported by superior technology. Instead, they were fighting against superior technology guided by unpredictable tactics. The Void Reapers began to retreat after suffering heavier casualties than their planning had anticipated. Their assault had been designed to overwhelm a base defended according to galactic standard procedures. When those procedures were enhanced by human tactical innovation, the entire attack plan became obsolete. Enemy forces are withdrawing, announced Lieutenant Sixtara from the communications station. Fleet units are beginning to disengage. The command center erupted in surprise celebration. Nobody had expected to successfully defend against such overwhelming enemy numbers. The base should have been overrun within hours, but it had held for over 6 hours until enemy forces chose to withdraw. Admiral Zefix's voice came over the communication system as his reinforcement fleet finally arrived in system. Forward Base Epsilon, this is Admiral Zefix. Report your status. Commander Vorthak looked around the command center, still processing what had happened. Base Epsilon reporting, sir. We have successfully repelled a major Void Reaper assault. The base is secure and operational. Impossible. Our preliminary scans indicated enemy fleet strength sufficient to overwhelm your defensive capabilities. Yes, sir. However, we received unexpected assistance from our human personnel. Their tactical approaches proved highly effective against enemy operations. There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. Human personnel? I was not aware that support troops were trained for combat operations. Park stepped forward. Sir, this is Captain Park, commanding human forces at this facility. Our soldiers adapted standard procedures to meet battlefield conditions. We worked in coordination with base defenders to implement effective countermeasures. Another pause, longer this time. Captain Park, prepare a full tactical report on your activities during this engagement. I want detailed analysis of every non-standard procedure your forces implemented. Yes, sir. Report will be ready within 6 hours. As the immediate crisis passed, word of the successful defense began to spread throughout the galactic military network. A base that should have fallen had not only survived, but had inflicted sufficient casualties to force enemy withdrawal. Most importantly, The defense had succeeded because of contributions from a species that the galactic military had considered suitable only for support roles. The mocking was about to stop, but the real test was yet to come. The Void Reapers would learn from this engagement, just as the galactic forces had. The next confrontation would be different, and humanity would face its first true test as full partners in galactic warfare. But for now, Forward Base Epsilon stood as proof that there was more to human military capability than anyone had imagined. The emergency session of the Galactic Military Command was unlike any in recorded history. Admiral Zephyx stood before the assembled representatives, his expression grim as he presented the tactical analysis from Forward Base Epsilon. The holographic displays showed detailed breakdowns of the engagement, highlighting every moment where human tactical innovation had changed the course of battle. "Gentlemen, beings, colleagues," he began, his voice carrying none of its usual confidence. "We must acknowledge a fundamental error in our assessment of human military capability." Chancellor Vrex leaned forward, her multiple eyes focused intently on the data streams flowing across her personal display. "The report indicates that human forces were instrumental in the successful defense. How is this possible given their limited physical capabilities and primitive technology?" "That is precisely what we need to understand," Admiral Zephyx replied. "Their equipment was inferior to standard galactic systems. Their physical performance metrics remained below optimal parameters. Yet their tactical contributions were decisive in achieving victory against overwhelming odds." General Corvus of the Titan's Sovereignty studied the combat footage with obvious confusion. "I have reviewed the engagement recordings multiple times. The humans appear to be fighting without following any recognizable tactical doctrine. Their movements are unpredictable, their positioning is inconsistent, and their response patterns vary constantly." "That may be exactly the point," suggested Dr. Centaura from the Silicon Collective. "Our analysis indicates that Void Reaper forces had prepared countermeasures for every standard galactic tactical approach. They had studied our procedures, identified our predictable patterns, and developed specific responses to neutralize our advantages." Commander Thox slammed his fist on the table, his tusks gleaming with frustration. "But how can chaos be more effective than proven military science? We have refined our tactical systems over centuries of warfare. Our approaches are optimal because they have been mathematically validated and field-tested." Admiral Zephyx activated a specific segment of combat footage. "Observe this sequence. Void Reaper assault teams are advancing through what their intelligence indicated was an undefended approach route. According to standard galactic defensive doctrine, this area would not be covered because it lacks proper firing positions and offers insufficient defensive advantages." The footage showed enemy forces moving confidently through a section of the base that appeared to offer little tactical value. Suddenly, concentrated fire erupted from multiple positions that had not existed in any defensive plan. The enemy forces were caught completely unprepared and eliminated within moments. The humans established these positions using improvised materials and adaptive positioning. They created defensive advantages where none had existed before. The Admiral paused the footage. More significantly, they did so without compromising the integrity of our standard defensive systems. Dr. Mentaris from the Mind Collective had been studying psychological profiles from the engagement. The human personnel displayed remarkable cognitive flexibility during high-stress conditions. While our forces followed established protocols, the humans continuously adapted their approaches based on real-time battlefield information. "They call it thinking outside the box," added General Sarah Chun, who had been invited to attend the session via secure communication link from Earth. Her image appeared on the main display, showing her in full military uniform surrounded by tactical equipment. "Our soldiers are trained to adapt to changing conditions rather than relying on predetermined responses." Chancellor Vrex addressed the human general directly. "General Chun, your forces achieved results that our military scientists calculated were impossible. How do you explain this apparent contradiction?" General Chun smiled slightly. "Respectfully, Your scientists made their calculations based on the assumption that we would fight according to your tactical frameworks. We didn't. We fought according to human doctrine, which emphasizes adaptation, improvisation, and using enemy assumptions against them. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The galactic military had spent centuries developing sophisticated tactical systems based on superior technology and specialized capabilities. They had created doctrines that were mathematically optimal for forces with overwhelming advantages. But those same doctrines became predictable when facing an enemy that had studied them. The Void Reapers have been observing our military operations for decades, Admiral Zefix continued. They understand our tactical patterns, our response protocols, and our strategic preferences. They prepared their assault on Forward Base Epsilon based on detailed knowledge of how we would defend such a facility. But they had no data on human tactical approaches, Dr. Sintara concluded. The humans introduced variables that did not exist in enemy planning algorithms. General Chen nodded. Our forces worked within your tactical framework while adding elements that your enemies hadn't encountered. We enhanced your strengths while compensating for your predictability. The discussion continued for hours as military leaders struggled to understand how a supposedly inferior force had achieved superior results. The mathematics of the engagement were clear, but the underlying principles challenged fundamental assumptions about military effectiveness. Perhaps we should examine specific examples, suggested Admiral Zefix. He activated detailed tactical displays showing various phases of the battle. During the initial electronic warfare phase, Void Reaper jamming successfully disrupted our communication systems. However, the humans established alternative networks using frequency ranges that the enemy was not targeting. The jamming was based on analysis of our standard communication protocols, explained General Chun. Our technicians used civilian-grade equipment operating on frequencies that weren't in your military databases. The enemy systems were designed to disrupt galactic standard communications, not improvised human networks. Commander Thok studied the frequency analysis charts. This approach is highly inefficient. The bandwidth limitations and signal quality issues would make such networks unsuitable for complex military operations. Under normal circumstances, yes, General Chin agreed. But normal circumstances would include having our primary communication systems functioning. When those systems were compromised, an inefficient backup network was better than no network at all. The next example proved even more enlightening. During the ground assault phase, human forces had allowed enemy troops to advance past what appeared to be their defensive positions, only to attack them from behind once they were committed to engaging the main galactic defenses. This violates basic defensive principles, General Corvus observed. Allowing enemy forces to penetrate your perimeter creates opportunities for them to reach critical objectives. It does, General Chen admitted. But it also creates opportunities to eliminate enemy forces when they're focused on other objectives. Our soldiers weren't trying to hold territory. They were trying to destroy enemy capabilities. Dr. Sintara processed this concept through her analytical matrices. The approach prioritizes enemy elimination over position retention. This suggests a tactical philosophy based on mobility and opportunity rather than strong-point defense. Exactly. We don't fight to hold ground. We fight to win battles. Sometimes those objectives align, but when they don't, we prioritize winning. The implications began to reshape how the assembled leaders understood military effectiveness. The galactic forces had developed tactics based on their technological and physical advantages. They fought to showcase their superiorities and maximize their inherent capabilities. The humans fought to achieve victory regardless of how that victory was obtained. There is another factor to consider, added Ambassador Lyrics, who had been quietly observing the discussion. The human approach appears to be inherently unpredictable. Even if the Void Reapers study this engagement, they cannot easily prepare countermeasures for tactics that change based on battlefield conditions. This observation sparked intense debate among the military representatives. Predictable tactics allowed for precise planning and coordinated execution. If every unit followed established procedures, commanders could anticipate the results of their orders and plan complex operations with mathematical precision. Unpredictable tactics made such coordination much more difficult. How do you maintain unit coordination when individual commanders are adapting tactics independently? Asked Admiral Zefix. Mission-type orders, General Chen replied. We tell our people what objectives to achieve rather than exactly how to achieve them. Each unit adapts their methods based on local conditions while working toward common goals. This approach requires extensive training and exceptional personnel, observed Dr. Mentaris. Soldiers must be capable of independent tactical decision-making while maintaining awareness of overall strategic objectives. It does, but the results speak for themselves. The session continued with detailed analysis of every phase of the engagement. Each example reinforced the same conclusion. Human tactical approaches achieved superior results not because they were mathematically optimal, but because they were adaptable and unpredictable. As the implications became clear, the galactic military leadership faced a fundamental choice. They could continue relying on their established tactical supremacy, which had proven vulnerable to enemies who understood their predictable patterns. Or they could learn from the humans and develop more adaptive approaches to warfare. I propose a comprehensive review of our tactical doctrines, Admiral Zefix announced. We need to understand how human approaches can be integrated with our existing capabilities without compromising our technological advantages. Agreed, said Chancellor Vrex. But we also need to expand human involvement in our military operations. If their tactical innovations are this effective, we should be utilizing them in more than support roles. General Chen's expression became serious. I appreciate the confidence, but I need to be clear about something. Our success at Forward Base Epsilon was possible because we were working within your defensive framework while adding our own elements. We were enhancing your strengths, not replacing them. What do you mean? Asked Commander Thok. I mean that human tactics work best when combined with superior capabilities like yours. Our adaptability is most effective when we have advanced technology and specialized personnel to adapt. The combination of galactic capabilities with human approaches could be far more powerful than either system alone. This concept revolutionized the discussion. Instead of viewing human and galactic military approaches as competing systems, the assembled leaders began to consider them as complementary elements of a more comprehensive tactical framework. Joint operations, Admiral Zefix mused. Human personnel integrated into standard galactic units, providing tactical flexibility while benefiting from superior technology and specialized capabilities. Training exchange programs, suggested General Corvus. Our personnel learn human adaptability principles while human soldiers gain proficiency with advanced galactic systems. Combined tactical development, added Dr. Centaura. New doctrines that incorporate both mathematical optimization and adaptive flexibility. The emergency session continued late into the night cycle as military leaders from across the galaxy began to understand that their assumptions about warfare were fundamentally incomplete. They possessed superior technology, advanced capabilities, and sophisticated tactical systems. But they had become predictable in their perfection. The humans brought something different, the ability to use imperfect methods to achieve perfect results. Their tactics were mathematically suboptimal, but practically superior because they could not be anticipated or countered through conventional analysis. As the session concluded, orders went out across the galaxy for immediate tactical reviews and strategic reassessments. Human military personnel would be transferred from support roles to integrated combat positions. Joint training programs would be established to combine galactic capabilities with human adaptability. Most importantly, the galactic military would begin developing new approaches to warfare that emphasize flexibility and unpredictability rather than just mathematical optimization and technological superiority. The Void Reapers had inadvertently triggered a revolution in galactic military thinking. By forcing the galaxy's forces to confront their predictability, they had created the conditions for their own eventual defeat. But that defeat would require more than just tactical innovation. It would require the galaxy's military forces to fundamentally reimagine what it meant to be truly superior in warfare. The humans had proven that being underestimated could be a powerful advantage. Now, they would help the galaxy's forces learn how to be underestimated by their enemies while maximizing their own capabilities in ways that no opponent could predict or counter. The real war was about to begin, and it would be fought according to principles that no military database had ever recorded. 6 months after the forward base Epsilon engagement, the Void Reapers launched their largest offensive in galactic history. Intelligence reports had indicated massive fleet movements in the Outer Rim territories, but the scale of the actual assault exceeded every projection. 3 entire sectors came under simultaneous attack as Void Reaper forces implemented a coordinated strategy designed to fracture galactic defenses and capture critical strategic positions. Admiral Zephyx commanded the defense from a strategic operations center on Nexus Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing the developing crisis across multiple star systems. The situation reports painted a grim picture. Overwhelming enemy numbers, coordinated multi-front assaults, and advanced electronic warfare capabilities that had improved significantly since the last engagement. Enemy fleet strength? He asked his operations staff. Preliminary counts indicate over 400 capital ships distributed across 17 different attack vectors, reported Commander Vorthak, who had been promoted following his performance at Forward Base Epsilon. Intelligence suggests they have been building this fleet for over 2 years while avoiding detection through dispersed construction and assembly. Admiral Zephyx studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The Void Reapers had clearly learned from their previous encounters with galactic forces. Their new strategy avoided direct confrontation with concentrated defensive fleets, instead targeting multiple objectives simultaneously to prevent effective response coordination. What is our current defensive posture? Fleet Command has authorized full mobilization of all available forces, replied Dr. Centaura. However, our ships are distributed across normal patrol sectors. Concentrating sufficient forces to counter any single attack vector will require abandoning others. The central problem was immediately apparent. The galactic military had been designed to maintain security across vast territories using technological superiority and specialized capabilities. Their forces could defeat any reasonable threat, but the current threat was not reasonable. The Void Reapers were deploying forces in quantities that made conventional defensive strategies ineffective. "Sir," called Lieutenant Sixtara from the communications station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from General Chen on Earth. She requests immediate conference authorization." Admiral Zephyx activated the communication link. General Chen appeared on the central display, her expression serious but determined. Behind her, the Earth Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as human military personnel coordinated with galactic forces across multiple time zones. "Admiral, I've been monitoring the developing situation. This looks like the kind of large-scale operation that human military doctrine is specifically designed to handle." General Chun, "I appreciate your confidence, but the scale of this assault exceeds anything we have previously encountered. We are facing simultaneous attacks across 3 sectors with enemy forces outnumbering our available defenders by significant margins. That's exactly why our approaches might be effective," General Chen replied. "Galactic doctrine assumes you can concentrate superior forces against specific threats. But when you can't achieve local superiority, you need different strategies." Admiral Zephyx paused, remembering the lessons learned from Forward Base Epsilon. "What do you propose?" "Integration. Not just human advisors working with galactic units, but fully integrated command structures that combine your technological capabilities with our tactical flexibility. Let us help you fight this war the way it needs to be fought." The Admiral looked around the operations center. His staff consisted of the finest military minds from dozens of species, each contributing specialized knowledge and capabilities. But they were all approaching the crisis using the same fundamental tactical frameworks that the Void Reapers had studied and learned to counter. General, what would full integration look like in practice? Joint command structures at every level. Human officers working alongside galactic commanders, providing alternative perspectives on tactical problems. Our enlisted personnel integrated into your units, bringing adaptive approaches to complement your advanced capabilities. Most importantly, permission to implement strategies that aren't in any galactic military database. The proposal was unprecedented. The galactic military had operated according to established hierarchies and specialized roles for centuries. Introducing human personnel into command positions would fundamentally alter how operations were planned and executed. The risk is considerable, observed Commander Thok over the Strategic Communication Network. His Brittarian forces were defending one of the primary attack sectors, facing overwhelming odds with characteristic determination. If human tactical approaches prove ineffective at this scale, we could lose critical systems. Commander Thok, with respect, we're going to lose critical systems anyway if we continue fighting this war according to conventional approaches, General Chen replied. The Void Reapers have specifically prepared to defeat galactic standard tactics. We need to give them something they haven't prepared for. Admiral Zephyx made the decision that would reshape galactic warfare. General Chen, I am authorizing immediate implementation of integrated command structures. Human officers will be granted tactical authority equivalent to their galactic counterparts. What do you need to begin operations? Real-time access to all tactical intelligence, communication links to every unit in the affected sectors, and authorization for human personnel to issue orders to galactic forces when tactical situations require immediate adaptation. The integration began immediately. Human military personnel who had been serving in support roles were rapidly promoted and assigned to operational command positions. Communication networks were reconfigured to include human tactical frequencies alongside galactic standard systems. Most importantly, standing orders were modified to authorize adaptive responses to battlefield conditions rather than strict adherence to predetermined procedures. The first test came in the Vegas sector, where Captain Maria Santos found herself serving as tactical coordinator for a mixed fleet defending 3-star systems against coordinated Void Reaper assault. Her counterpart, Admiral Corax of the Helix Confederation, commanded superior firepower but was struggling to respond effectively to the enemy's multi-vector attack pattern. Admiral Corax, this is Captain Santos. I've been analyzing enemy movement patterns, and I believe they're using our defensive predictability against us. Explain, Corax replied over the tactical network. They're attacking each system in sequence, forcing us to respond according to our standard defensive protocols. While we're repositioning forces to defend the primary target, they're moving into position to attack the next system. They're staying one step ahead of our response cycle. Our current positions are mathematically optimal for defending all 3 systems simultaneously, Corax noted. Abandoning these positions would reduce our defensive effectiveness. Under normal circumstances, yes. But these aren't normal circumstances. They know where we are, they know how we'll respond, and they're exploiting that knowledge. Captain Santos activated her tactical display, showing enemy fleet movements overlaid with projected galactic defensive responses. Look at their timing. They're not trying to achieve quick victories. They're trying to control the pace of engagement. They attack, we respond predictably. They withdraw and attack somewhere else, keeping us reactive instead of proactive. Admiral Corax studied the patterns, his analytical mind processing the implications. What alternative do you propose? We stop responding to their attacks and start dictating the terms of engagement. Instead of defending fixed positions, we create mobile defensive zones that force them to react to our movements. The concept was revolutionary. Galactic defensive doctrine was based on controlling territory and strongpoints. Human doctrine focused on controlling the enemy's options and forcing them to fight under disadvantageous conditions. Implement your approach, Captain Santos. Coordinate with Fleet Tactical to establish mobile defensive patterns. The results were immediate and dramatic. Instead of positioning their forces to defend specific systems, the combined fleet began moving in unpredictable patterns that forced the Void Reapers to constantly adjust their attack plans. Enemy forces would move into position to assault a defended system, only to discover that the defenders had relocated and were now threatening their supply lines. Enemy fleet formations are becoming disorganized, reported Admiral Korax after 6 hours of mobile defensive operations. Their coordination is degrading as they struggle to maintain formation cohesion while responding to our position changes. That's the idea, Captain Santos replied. We're making them play our game instead of letting them control the engagement parameters. Similar innovations were occurring throughout the battle zone as human officers introduced tactical flexibility into previously rigid defensive systems. In the Centauri sector, Commander David Kim worked with Alterian fleet elements to implement what he called elastic defense, allowing enemy forces to achieve apparent breakthroughs while actually drawing them into prepared ambush zones. The enemy believes they have broken through our perimeter, reported Admiral Zefix as he monitored the developing situation. However, our forces have withdrawn to secondary positions that offer superior tactical advantages. The Alterian fleet commanders had initially resisted abandoning prepared defensive positions, but the results were undeniable. Void Reaper forces that expected to exploit breakthrough opportunities instead found themselves trapped in crossfire zones established by human tactical planning. Their assault formations are optimized for attacking fixed defenses, Commander Kim explained over the tactical network. But when the defenses aren't where they expect them to be, their formations become vulnerabilities instead of assets. The most significant innovation came from Colonel Jennifer Walsh, who is coordinating multi-species ground operations on contested planets. The Void Reapers had achieved orbital supremacy in several systems and were conducting planetary assaults using overwhelming numbers and advanced equipment. Traditional planetary defense focuses on holding key terrain and population centers, she reported to Admiral Zefix. But the enemy has sufficient forces to simultaneously attack all critical objectives. We need to change what we're defending. Clarification, Colonel. Instead of defending places, we defend capabilities. Instead of trying to hold cities, we focus on preserving our ability to conduct operations. Mobile command centers, distributed supply networks, and flexible defensive units that can respond to threats anywhere on the planet. Colonel Walsh's approach transformed planetary warfare from static defensive operations into dynamic campaigns where human adaptability complemented alien capabilities. Crothry defensive specialists provided strongpoint security while human forces maintained mobility between positions. Veloxian rapid response teams conducted hit-and-run operations while human coordinators ensured they were attacking strategically significant targets. Enemy ground forces are reporting increased difficulty maintaining operational tempo, observed Dr. Mentaris, who is analyzing psychological reports from captured Void Reaper personnel. They expected to face conventional planetary defense patterns, but instead encounter constantly shifting resistance that adapts to their tactical responses. The transformation of galactic military operations accelerated as human tactical innovations proved effective across multiple theaters simultaneously. But the most significant change was psychological rather than tactical. Galactic forces were learning to think differently about warfare itself. Admiral, reported Commander Vorthak during a strategic briefing, our casualties are running 30% below projected rates despite facing superior enemy numbers. More importantly, enemy casualty rates are exceeding their sustainable levels. How is this possible? Human tactical approaches maximize the effectiveness of our existing capabilities while minimizing our predictability. We are fighting more efficiently than ever before while presenting enemy forces with problems they cannot solve using conventional analysis. The Void Reaper Offensive, which had been planned as a decisive campaign to break galactic resistance, was instead becoming a prolonged engagement that favored the defenders. Enemy forces were suffering unsustainable losses while failing to achieve their strategic objectives. But the most important development was yet to come. As human tactical innovations proved their worth across multiple theaters, galactic forces began to understand that warfare was not just about having superior capabilities. It was about using those capabilities in ways that enemies could not predict or counter. The Void Reapers had studied galactic military doctrine for years, developing specific countermeasures for every known tactical approach. But they had not prepared for an enemy that could invent new approaches during active combat operations. The war was far from over, but the balance of advantages was shifting toward forces that combined technological superiority with tactical unpredictability. The galaxy was learning to fight like humans, and their enemies were discovering that preparation was useless against opponents who refused to be predictable. The final phase of the conflict would test whether human adaptability could overcome Void Reaper desperation, as the enemy prepared to implement strategies that would challenge every assumption about what civilized species were willing to do to achieve victory. The final phase of the Void Reaper War began not with massive fleet engagements or planetary assaults, but with a single intercepted transmission that changed everything. Deep space monitoring stations detected an encrypted communication from the Void Reaper command hierarchy, and when human cryptanalysts broke the encryption using pattern analysis techniques that had never been applied to alien communication protocols, the message revealed the enemy's ultimate strategy. They're planning to use biological weapons, General Sarachin reported during an emergency session of the Galactic War Council. Her expression was grim as she presented the decoded intelligence to the assembled military leaders. Not just against military targets, but against entire populated systems. They intend to eliminate civilian populations to deny us the industrial and logistical support necessary to continue resistance. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Biological warfare was considered the ultimate violation of galactic civilization's fundamental principles. Every species in the initiative had agreed to prohibitions against such weapons, understanding that biological agents could spread beyond their intended targets and threaten all life in affected regions. Admiral Zephyx was the first to respond. "Are you certain of this intelligence assessment?" "Confirmed through multiple sources," replied Colonel Jennifer Walsh, who had been leading the Human Intelligence Analysis team. "Intercepted communications, observed fleet movements, and captured enemy personnel all indicate preparation for large-scale biological warfare operations. This changes the nature of our conflict fundamentally," observed Chancellor Vrex. "We are no longer fighting a territorial war, or even a war for galactic supremacy. We are fighting for the survival of our civilizations." The implications were staggering. The Void Reapers had apparently concluded that they could not defeat galactic forces through conventional military operations, even with their numerical advantages and strategic innovations. Their response was to abandon conventional warfare entirely and implement genocidal strategies designed to eliminate their opponent's ability to resist. "Do we have intelligence on the specific nature of these biological agents?" asked Dr. Centaura. "Preliminary analysis suggests engineered pathogens designed to target different species simultaneously," General Chen replied. "The agents appear to be tailored for maximum lethality across the widest possible range of biological systems. They're not trying to conquer our territory. They're trying to sterilize it." Commander Thok's massive frame shook with barely controlled rage. "This is not warfare. This is extermination. The Brutarian clans demand immediate authorization for total retaliation against all Void Reaper territories and populations." "That approach will not solve our immediate problem," General Chen interjected. "Retaliation is meaningless if we don't survive their initial biological assault. We need to prevent their attack and neutralize their capabilities before considering broader strategic responses." The discussion that followed revealed the full scope of the crisis. Intelligence indicated that Void Reaper biological weapons were nearing operational deployment. Their fleet movements suggested they were positioning forces to simultaneously attack multiple core systems within the galactic civilian population centers. Most critically, their biological agents were designed to spread through normal atmospheric and water systems, making traditional defensive measures ineffective. Our medical facilities are not equipped to handle pandemic-scale biological warfare, admitted Dr. Healer Prime ZYTEH of the Medical Collective. We can treat known pathogens and develop countermeasures for conventional biological agents, but these appear to be engineered specifically to overwhelm our defensive capabilities. Admiral Zephyx turned to General Chun. What options do human military doctrines suggest for addressing this type of threat? Prevention through preemptive action, she replied immediately. We cannot allow biological weapons to be deployed under any circumstances. The only acceptable outcome is complete neutralization of enemy capabilities before they can implement their plan. That would require simultaneous strikes against dozens of Void Reaper facilities across enemy-controlled territory, observed Admiral Korax. Our forces are already engaged in defensive operations. We lack sufficient reserves for such extensive offensive action. General Chun smiled grimly. Admiral, you're thinking like a galactic commander again. You're assuming we need to destroy every facility using conventional assault operations. But there are other approaches. She activated her tactical display, showing a comprehensive analysis of Void Reaper biological weapons development sites. The enemy's biological warfare program has a critical weakness: centralization. They're developing these weapons in specialized facilities that require specific environmental conditions and advanced equipment. More importantly, they're testing and storing the agents in locations that can be identified and targeted. You propose targeted strikes against research facilities? Asked Commander Thok. I propose something much more comprehensive. We're going to turn their own biological weapons program against them. The plan that General Chen outlined was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of trying to destroy enemy biological weapons through conventional bombardment, human intelligence teams had identified ways to contaminate the weapons with agents that would render them harmless or, better yet, dangerous to their creators. Our biological warfare specialists have developed countermeasures that can be introduced into enemy weapons systems through their own distribution networks, explained Dr. Elizabeth Warner, Earth's chief xenobiologist. We don't need to capture their facilities. We need to infiltrate their production systems. This approach requires insertion of personnel into heavily defended enemy territory, Admiral Zephyx observed. The risk factors are extreme. Less extreme than allowing biological weapons to be deployed against civilian populations, General Chen replied. Besides, this is exactly the kind of operation that human tactical approaches are designed to handle. The mission that followed would be remembered as the most audacious special operations campaign in galactic history. Human special forces teams, equipped with galactic stealth technology and supported by alien specialists, began infiltrating Void Reaper territory to target biological weapons facilities from within. Captain David Park, who had commanded the defense of Forward Base Epsilon, found himself leading one of these teams deep into enemy space. His unit consisted of 12 human soldiers and specialist personnel from 6 different species, each contributing unique capabilities to the mission. Primary objective is the research facility on Kepler-7. He briefed his team as their stealth ship approached the target system. Intelligence indicates this location is developing biological agents specifically designed to target human and Alterian physiology. Secondary objectives? Asked Sergeant Rebecca Torres, who had been promoted following her performance in previous engagements. Contaminate their biological weapons with countermeasures developed by Dr. Warner's team. If possible, introduce agents that will make their weapons dangerous to Void Reaper personnel. If contamination is not feasible, destroy the facility and all research materials. The infiltration took 3 days of careful movement through enemy-controlled space. using human stealth techniques combined with galactic cloaking technology. The team reached Kepler-7 undetected and began their approach to the primary research facility. Target facility is larger than intelligence estimates indicated, reported Corporal James Wright from his observation position. I count 17 separate laboratory complexes and at least 3 storage areas for biological materials. Contamination approach still feasible? Park asked Dr. Lina Voss, the human biological warfare specialist assigned to the mission. Affirmative. The facility uses centralized atmospheric and water processing systems. If we can access the primary distribution network, we can contaminate their entire operation. The operation proceeded according to human tactical doctrine. Adapt to actual conditions, use enemy assumptions against them, and achieve objectives through unpredictable approaches. Instead of assaulting the facility directly, the team infiltrated through maintenance systems and service areas that Void Reaper security had not considered significant. Amazing, commented Specialist Izura, a Veloxian reconnaissance expert working with the human team. Your approaches to covert operations are completely different from galactic stealth doctrines. You emphasize concealment through mundane activities rather than technological superiority. Hiding in plain sight, agreed Sergeant Torres as she disabled security sensors using techniques that avoided triggering alarm protocols. The best camouflage is looking like something that belongs in the environment. The contamination of the biological weapons facility took 6 hours of careful work. Dr. Voss and her team introduced countermeasures into the enemy's biological agent production systems, ensuring that any weapons created at the facility would be neutralized before deployment. More significantly, they introduced agents that would make the facility's research dangerous to Void Reaper personnel. Contamination complete, Dr. Voss reported. The countermeasures will activate within 72 hours, rendering all biological agents produced here harmless to target species. The additional agents will become active in 48 hours, creating hazardous conditions for enemy researchers. Similar operations were conducted simultaneously across Void Reaper space as human special operations teams targeted biological weapons facilities throughout enemy territory. The missions combined human infiltration techniques with galactic technology to achieve results that neither approach could have accomplished independently. But the most significant aspect of these operations was not their tactical success, but their strategic implications. The Void Reapers had invested enormous resources in biological warfare development, believing it was their path to victory against superior galactic forces. When their biological weapons programs began failing catastrophically, their entire strategic framework collapsed. Enemy biological facilities are reporting systemic contamination failures, Admiral Zefix announced during a strategic briefing 2 weeks after the operations began. Intelligence indicates they have lost capability to produce viable biological weapons. More than that, added General Chun, their biological weapons research has become a liability. Several facilities have had to be evacuated due to contamination with agents that specifically target Void Reaper physiology. The psychological impact on Void Reaper forces was devastating. They had committed to biological warfare as their solution to military disadvantage, only to discover that their enemies could turn biological weapons against them more effectively than they could deploy them against their targets. Enemy fleet movements suggest they are abandoning biological warfare strategies, reported Commander Vorthak. They appear to be returning to conventional military operations, but without the numerical advantages they possessed at the beginning of their offensive. The final phase of the war proceeded rapidly. Void Reaper forces, demoralized by the failure of their ultimate weapons and depleted by months of ineffective conventional operations, began retreating to core territories. Galactic forces, now fully integrated with human tactical innovations, pursued them relentlessly. Enemy resistance is collapsing across all fronts, Admiral Zefix reported during the final strategic briefing of the war. Their command structure appears to be fragmenting as different factions debate surrender versus continued resistance. The war ended not with a climactic battle, but with a negotiated surrender as Void Reaper leadership acknowledged they could no longer sustain military operations against forces that combined galactic capabilities with human adaptability. In the aftermath of victory, the Galactic Defense Initiative underwent fundamental reorganization. Human tactical doctrines were integrated into standard training programs for all species. Command structures were modified to emphasize flexibility and adaptation rather than rigid procedures. Most importantly, humanity was granted full membership in galactic military leadership. The transformation of our military capabilities is remarkable, Admiral Zefix observed during the post-war analysis conference. We have retained our technological and specialized advantages while gaining the tactical flexibility necessary to counter any enemy strategy. General Sarah Chun, now promoted to Galactic Defense Marshal, addressed the assembled representatives. This war taught U.S. that military superiority is not about having the best equipment or the strongest soldiers. It's about being able to use whatever capabilities you have in ways that your enemies cannot predict or counter. The mocking had ended long before the war concluded. By the time of victory, galactic military leaders understood that humanity brought something invaluable to their forces: the ability to transform any situation into an advantage through adaptation, innovation, and refusal to be limited by conventional thinking. The Void Reapers had been defeated not because galactic forces were stronger, but because they had learned to be unpredictable. And in the vast expanse of the galaxy, where new threats would inevitably emerge, the combination of advanced capabilities and adaptive thinking would prove to be the ultimate military advantage. The humans had taught the galaxy how to fight, and the galaxy would never be the same.